Good morning, everyone! Hello, I am Anne Asis-Carilo. Get ready as we give you stories to keep you entertained, informed, and prepared.
And I'm Monique Tuzon, sending some love and warmth your way. And speaking about warmth, we need warmth right now.
Yes.
It is freezing in this cold, rainy weather.
That is exactly what we need. You know, waking up to this cold, cold weather. There's another storm in our country, and a lot of kids are still in bed because classes are suspended in most cities.
Yes.
Yes. And our viewers are probably preparing some warm soup to serve their families.
Yeah, I hope you guys are cozy and watching us right now, so make sure you stay tuned. And we got some weather updates as well.
That's right. The Billionario News Channel is closely monitoring Tropical Storm Christine. Paolo del Rosario joins us for more weather updates.
Welcome to Weather HQ on It's a Beautiful Day. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm Christine. As the tropical storm approaches the Philippine landmass, many areas in Luzon and Visayas are now under tropical cyclone wind signal warnings. Signal number 2 is up in most parts of Luzon, particularly in Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur, La Union, Pangasinan, Apayao, Abra, Kalinga, Mountain Province, Ifugao, Benguet, Mainland Cagayan, Isabela, Quirino, Nueva Vizcaya, Aurora, Nueva Ecija, Tarlac, the northern portion of Zambales, the northern portion of Bulacan, northern portion of Quezon, including the Polillo Islands, Camarines Norte, and the northern and eastern portions of Camarines Sur, Catanduanes, the eastern portion of Albay, and the east portion of Sorsogon. I know there's a handful, but make sure you check out our social media accounts on the latest on the wind signals. Let's move on to the Visayas though. In the Visayas, signal number 2 is raised in the northeastern portions of northern Samar, northern portion of eastern Samar, and areas under signal number 2 will experience winds of up to 88 kilometers per hour and expect torrential rains. Now over in Luzon, signal number 1 is raised in Batanes, Babuyan Islands, Pampanga, the rest of Zambales, Bataan, the rest of Bulacan, Metro Manila, Rizal, Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, the rest of Quezon, Occidental Mindoro, including Lubang Islands, Oriental Mindoro, Marinduque, Romblon, Calamian Islands, the rest of Camarines Sur, the rest of Albay, the rest of Sorsogon, Masbate, including Ticao and Burias Islands, Calamian Islands as well. Over in Visayas, signal number 1 is up in Aklan, Capiz, Antique, including Caluya Islands, Iloilo, Guinaras, the northern portion of Negros Occidental, the northern portion of Negros Oriental, the northern and central portions of Cebu, including Pantayan Islands and Camotes Islands. Bohol, the rest of eastern Samar, the rest of northern Samar, Samar in general, Leyte, Biliran, and southern Leyte. Over in Mindanao, signal number 1 is up in Dinagat Islands and Surigao del Norte, including Siargao, Bocas Grande Group. Areas under signal number 1 will experience gusty winds of up to 60 kilometers per hour, and residents should prepare for intense to heavy rains. Now, Christine slightly intensifies over the sea east of Quezon. It is located 180 kilometers northeast of Verac, Catanduanes, with maximum sustained winds of 85 kilometers per hour and gustiness of up to 105 kilometers per hour. Now, it's moving in a west-northward direction at a speed of 25 kilometers per hour. It is possible to hit the landmass tonight or Thursday morning in northern Aurora or Isabela province, but it will depend on the change of speed of the storm Christine in the following hours. Now, based on the track, it is expected to intensify as a severe tropical storm before it hits the landmass right over here. Now, once it will hit the landmass, it will traverse over northern Luzon and is expected to weaken once it is in the West Philippine Sea by Thursday, as you can see the track over here. Now, this area of uncertainty or the area of probability shows us that the possible landfall areas, whether it will move upward or downward in terms of direction. It is also possible that Christine will intensify into a severe tropical storm before its landfall. Now, Christine is expected to exit the Philippine area of responsibility on Friday. Let's take a look at the satellite images. In the satellite image, we can see the areas covered by the storm, not just the circulation, but also the extension. Now, as you can see here, most parts of the country are covered in clouds, and these clouds will bring heavy rainfall as well. As you can see here, practically taking over majority of Luzon, and Mindanao. Palawan also not spared from that as well. Mindanao having a bit of a respite compared to the rest of the country, but that's how it's looking at. Satellite shows a widespread rains are expected for Luzon the whole day today, while those in red marks, particularly in central Luzon and the rest of Calabarzon and Metro Manila, as well as Occidental and Oriental Mindoro, Calamayan Islands, Masbate, and the northern Samar, moderate to intense rains are expected. Those with the yellow marks, though, particularly in Cagayan, Isabela, Apayao, Aurora, Catanduanes, Camarines Norte, and Camarines Sur, torrential rains are expected. Make sure to stay updated to the weather forecast and listen to your local government units for the necessary actions to take because of these rains. Let's take a look at Visayas and Mindanao. Because of the extension of the tropical storm Christine, rains are also expected, particularly in the western portion of Visayas and Mindanao. Now, as for our sea conditions, rather, here's the western portion of Visayas and Mindanao. Now, the whole of the coastal waters of Luzon and Visayas will have rough to very rough sea conditions because of the storm weather. Sea travel is prohibited in this kind of weather. A moderate to high risk of storm surge may occur within the next hour. Storm surges of up to 2 to 3 meters are possible in the coastal areas of Aurora, Cagayan, and Catanduanes, while storm surges of up to 1 to 2 meters are possible in coastal areas of Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur, La Union, Pangasinan, and Zambales. Inundation or flood depth due to the storm surges will depend on the topography of these areas. Still on Tropical Storm Christine, Malacanang suspends work in government and classes in all levels in Luzon. However, those with essential roles in this time of calamity are still expected to go on duty. In the private sector, the suspension of work is left to the discretion of companies and organizations. In Albay, the provincial government has declared a state of calamity due to the impact of the tropical storm. It says it has 40 million pesos available calamity funds. Local authorities implemented forced evacuation in areas affected by flash floods, landslides, and lahar. Meantime, the provincial government of Camarines Sur also enforced a mandatory evacuation. As of yesterday, there were impassable areas due to the flood along Maharlika Highway. Former Vice President Leni Robredo echoes the urgent appeal of the local government of Naga City in Camarines Sur for more rescue boats and trucks due to rising floodwaters. There are reports of residents trapped on their roofs. Tropical storms Christine has turned low-lying areas into gushing rivers, causing forced evacuation. Balikan muna natin ang sitwasyon sa Albay sa epekto ng bagyong Christine. May ulat ang aming stringer na si Nilo del Carmen sa naganap sa bayan ng Pio Duran. Nilo, anong nangyayari ngayon?
Yes, Paolo, tuluyan ang bumigay ang isang hanging bridge dito sa bayan ng Pio Duran, Albay nitong Martes ng gabi. Ayon sa Pio Duran MDRRMO, kung alas 12:04 ng hating gabi ng tuluyang bumagsak ang nasa 120 meters na hanging bridge sa Sitio Lagaan sa Barangay Banawan matapos na mag-collapse ang concrete base support nito sa magkabilang dulo at ang mga steel braces dahil sa laki ng baha at sa patuloy na pag-ulan dulot pa rin ng bagyong Christine. Nawasak ang buong structure at nalaglag at natangay ng malakas na agos ng baha sa ilog. Ang hanging bridge ang nag-uugnay sa barangay patungo sa kabayanan at daanan ng mga estudyanteng pumapasok at mga residenteng nagtatrabaho. Labis namang ikinalungkot ng mga naninirahan ang pagkawasak nito lalo na't magdiriwang pa sila ng kapistahan ng kanilang patron na Senior Saint Rafael de Arcangel ngayong araw at hanggang bukas. Nag-uulat para sa BNC Nilo del Carmen, Abante Radio, Lucena City.
Salamat. Yan si Nilo del Carmen mula sa Southern Luzon. And that's the latest weather information. Catch our next update on Tropical Storm Christine on Weather HQ at 9 a.m. here on the Billionaire News Channel. Now, we've got more stories for you after the break. Don't go away. It's a beautiful day. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. You are still watching It's a Beautiful Day. Welcome back, Pa!
We miss you, Pa!
Thank you so much.
We missed you so much.
How was the land down under? I'm surprised you don't have an Australian accent.
Well, I tried using an Australian accent a while ago, right before the show. Then Monique got annoyed. She got so annoyed. She said she wouldn't be able to do the show.
Can I hear it?
He didn't. No, he was doing. He
Now,
wasn't doing
because
it.
I started out just saying "G'day, Mike," and she was like, she was out. She was
I
over.
was like, get out of here, Paolo.
It was over. I would love to see another quokka and go out and see more koalas and kangaroos. I saw wild kangaroos. It was kind of weird. I'll tell you all about it later on.
Did one kick you? Because last time I went to Australia, one kicked my friend.
It depends. Only alpha kangaroos would go up and fight you. Yung nakakita mo online,
Diba
yung
yan,
medyo
yung-
muskulado.
Oo, tapos they really punch
They
you.
will
no?
really punch
Yeah,
you. Pero
yeah.
yung nakita
Nag-body
namin.
combat na siya.
Yes.
Nag-body combat. Buti na nag-body combat din ako dito, di ba?
Oh,
Nung
yeah.
You came
You were
prepared.
ready.
Yeah,
Yes.
but of course, I still would bet on a kangaroo over me in a fight.
Same.
So I'm just happy that we didn't get to that point. But for the meantime, I know we're laughing a lot here, but we got some serious business to get into first. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Vice President Sara Duterte is not backing down from a slew of tirades following her controversial press conference. For some lawmakers, what VP Sara said about exhuming Ferdinand Marcos Sr.'s body is not normal. But VP Sara says she's willing to prove them wrong.
Game, tayo dyan. I will do 2 tests. Neuropsychiatric exam and drug test. Pero dapat, lahat ng mga young guns na kandidato, lahat ng mga congressional candidates ay magpa-drug test.
Meanwhile, Solons in the lower chamber's Young Guns bloc accept Duterte's dare to take drug and psych tests. But Zambales 1st District Representative Jefferson Conghun says this, quote, unnecessary dare should push her to face the probe on her confidential funds. The Young Guns bloc adds they would undergo the test if Duterte vows to testify under oath before the House Blue Ribbon Committee investigating her alleged fund misuse. Conghun emphasizes there is a need to question Duterte's mental capacity as the country's vice president.
Andiyan na yung katanungan kung siya ba karapat-dapat pa maging vice presidente. Dahil katulad nga na sinabi ko kanina, ang opisina ng vice president isang sensitibong posisyon na ang kailangan, ang nakaupo rito, nasa tama ang kanyang pag-iisip.
Former Human Rights Commission Chair Laila De Lima testified before the House Quad Committee Tuesday, recounting how she uncovered mass graves where the bodies of extrajudicial killing victims were allegedly dumped. This testimony comes as part of the committee's ongoing investigation into the Duterte administration's controversial war on drugs. De Lima, who led an investigation into these killings as early as 2009, provided details of her findings regarding the alleged Davao Death Squad, or DDS. She also named SPO4 Bienvenido Laud, who allegedly handled the Laud Quarry mass grave, and SPO3 Jim Tan, who handled Mandog mass grave.
This was the Davao model. May kasamang mga reward, may kasamang mga cash incentives, may bracketing din. Depende kung sino involved, kung sino papatayin. And so that's the reward, that's the incentives. So, posible rin na gumamit uli ng Intel Fund, this time from the Office of the President.
Thanks, but no thanks. Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa says he will attend the Senate's first hearing on the bloody war on drugs, despite calls for him to inhibit from the probe. Akbayan earlier urged Senator Bato and Senator Bongo to take an indefinite leave to avoid conflict of interest. But de la Rosa rejected the call, insisting, quote, I have to confront the liars because the public deserves to know the truth. Senator Bato was the chief implementer of the drug war as PNP chief under the Duterte administration. De la Rosa also says former President Rodrigo Duterte will show up in the hearing regardless of who is presiding. The Blue Ribbon Committee hearing on the drug war, led by Senator Coco Pimentel, is set for Monday, October 28th. China is accused of running a covert disinformation campaign targeting Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. amid rising tensions in the South China Sea. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute has linked Beijing to a deep fake video falsely portraying Marcos as a drug user, raising concerns about efforts to discredit the Philippine leader and destabilize the region. Our Foreign Affairs editor Jam Alindogan reports.
There are growing fears that the South China Sea appears to be edging closer to a full-blown crisis. Tensions are escalating as China's aggressive moves against the Philippines intensify. Filipino vessels encounter frequent harassment at key locations such as the Second Thomas Shoal and Scarborough Shoal. What began as a simmering dispute has become the region's most volatile flashpoint.
While incursions in the South China Sea continue between the naval forces of the Philippines and China, another battle rages in the information sphere, one that is harder to trace and where China once again holds the upper hand.
China is accused of running a coordinated covert disinformation campaign aimed at discrediting Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos and stoking tensions in the contested waters. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute, or ASPI, is a policy think tank based in Canberra in Australia. It says it has linked the Chinese government to a deepfake video falsely depicting the president as a drug user. Released just hours before his State of the Nation address, the video spread rapidly online, particularly among followers of former President Rodrigo Duterte. ASPI says that a network of coordinated inauthentic accounts on platforms like X and YouTube amplified the false story. These social media accounts are believed to be tied to China. The effort also appears to be part of a broader strategy to weaken Marcos, who has taken a tougher line on China's territorial claims compared to his predecessor. China's efforts to bolster Duterte's political ambitions are not new. In 2020, Meta disclosed that it had dismantled a network originating from China, which had been disseminating content in support of Duterte, especially in standing firm against China's attempts to block resupply missions in the West Philippine Sea, has provoked Beijing's anger.
I call it cognitive warfare, attacking our cognitive processes. The ultimate domain of war, the final domain would be the mind of the individual. And if you could shape how a person would think, then you could now manipulate his actions or his behavior. Cognitive warfare is now being waged against us. We see malign influence. We see misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. We are getting hit across a broad range of the different dimensions of national power.
Experts warned that China's use of local actors, such as bloggers, political supporters, and influencers, to spread disinformation signals a sharper, more aggressive turn in its influence operations in the Philippines. ASPI cautions that Beijing's meddling could escalate in an effort to shift the political landscape in the Philippines in its favor. ASPI also suggests that the Philippines should expand its focus to address the growing threat of cyber-enabled foreign interference and hostile influence in the West Philippine Sea. The warning from ASPI is clear. As China's influence campaigns grow bolder, Manila and its allies must move quickly to shield their democratic institutions from foreign interference. Jamela Alindogan, Insight, BNC.
The Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, urges candidates to register their social media accounts. The poll body has given a deadline of until December 13th for election aspirants to do so. COMELEC Chairman George Garcia warns them of potential disqualification and election offense if they fail to do so. COMELEC is closely monitoring social media for fake news, misinformation, and AI deepfakes this election season. The poll body says nearly 200 of over 44,000 aspirants and party list hopefuls have registered their social media accounts thus far.
The Philippine Stock Exchange manages to book slim gains. the main index rising 6 points or about 0.1%, following a volatile Tuesday as investors brace for more third-quarter earnings reports, value turnover coming in at 5.3 billion pesos. Advancers beating decliners 99 to 94. Among the most active stocks, BDO, Ayala Land, and BPI. Over in world news, Israel launched a fresh wave of strikes on Gaza and Lebanon, escalating its offensive after confirming the death of a top Hamas leader. Israel says this development has triggered this new round of attacks. Both Gaza and Lebanon are now under heavy fire, with airstrikes targeting Hamas, Hezbollah positions. Gaza health officials said more than 20 people had been killed by Israeli forces. Dozens of bodies of people killed by Israeli fire were on roadsides and under rubble. Officials explained rescue teams could not reach them because of the ongoing strikes. The UN Palestinian Refugee Agency on Tuesday called for a temporary truce to let people leave areas of northern Gaza. Health officials said they were running out of supplies to treat patients hurt in a 3-week-old Israeli offensive. In the U.S., it's neck and neck in the race for the White House. A new Reuters IPSOS poll shows Vice President Kamala Harris holding a slim lead over former President Donald Trump. The poll puts Harris at 46% and Trump at 43%. But voters aren't feeling too thrilled. About inflation, jobs, and political divisions have left both camps struggling to win hearts and minds. Trump was at a Latino business roundtable in Miami on Tuesday, while Harris was scheduled for interviews with Telemundo and NBC. Moving on to sports, heads up to college sports fans. The UAP and the NCAA has postponed its games for today, October 23rd, because of Tropical Storm Christine. The UAP made the announcement following class suspensions in Manila, Quezon City, and Pasay City. Postponed events include the collegiate men's basketball, junior high school boys basketball, and high school boys volleyball. The games were to be held at the SM Mall of Asia Arena and Paco Arena. The league will announce rescheduling updates later. Meanwhile, the NCAA is also calling off today's games, Lyceum versus CSB and Emilio Aguinaldo College versus JRU due to bad weather. The Grand Old League is likewise rescheduling the affected games after, quote, due study.
Now let's talk entertainment. Liam Payne's friends and family are still grappling with his sudden death, raising concerns about the financial future of his son, Bear. Reports suggest that Payne, who had a net worth of $70 million, took steps to ensure Bear would be financially secure. His wealth came from various sources, including real estate, residuals from One Direction, a solo music career, and endorsements like Hugo Boss. He had previously stated that his life and money were dedicated to Bear, mentioning that he had businesses set up for his son to manage or sell in the future.
We've got more stories for you here on the show after the break. We put the spotlight on sports psychology and how it helps athletes to become mentally tough amid great expectations. It's a beautiful day. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. You're still watching It's a Beautiful Day, and here are pictures, live pictures from EDSA White Plains. On the left side is southbound going to Shaw Boulevard. On the right is northbound going to Cubao. As you can see, traffic looking a bit loose there considering the weather conditions. Not a surprise. There are classes suspended, and government agencies also don't have work today. So if you do hit the road, make sure you watch out for those weather conditions. Let's move on over to EDSA GA Tower over in Mandaluyong. On the left-hand side, it's northbound going to Shaw Boulevard. On the right is southbound going to Makati. Sound in mind and sound in body. Elite athletes not only have to be peak physical condition, but also have to be sharp mentally. The growing demand for sports psychologists, both here and around the world, just shows how important mental fitness has become in competitive sports. Now, joining us for this discussion is sports psychologist Dr. Naira Orbeta. Thank you very much for joining us. Maraming salamat.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's really
Good
nice to
morning,
be
Miss Naira.
here.
You know, it's rainy weather. I'm so glad you braved the storms to be with us.
Right.
And of course, when we talk about storms, we're here to talk about the mental storms that athletes go through. But before we begin on that, I want to talk more about you, Doc. Kasi sports psychology, it's a very specific field. I mean, psychology is so broad. Pero bakit importante na may sports psychology in particular?
Well, obviously, the field of sports is $1 billion industry. And it's competitive. So just that demand for having a high level of mental toughness, having psychological skills, having the proper fortitude to be able to brave that whole competitive environment really shows the need for sports psychology. And I think from an early age, because my family, although we're recreational level,
Yeah.
my family kind of was sports people. I kind of was an athlete, wannabe athlete also from that level. So I remember when I first started psychology in the undergrad, it was really just, I want to try to understand my own issues, like many of the psychologists will tell you they go into that field for. And I remember reading an article about sports psychology, and I said, I want to do that. So, that's kind of my entry into the world of sports psychology right there.
And of course, when you talk about athletes in particular, kasi I always, as someone who's covered athletes for a while, I always say na they're special kind of crazy. They have to be because of the level of competitiveness that is there. You take a look at how athletes are starting to accept sports psychology. Do you see more and more people understanding now that yung mental aspect of the game is something that they have to focus on as well?
Yes, we have been seeing a surge. I think one of the reasons for the surge really was, and we thank Heidelin Diaz for that, because Heidelin Diaz is very, very vocal about the help that she got from Team HDN, in particular Dr. Karen Trinidad, who was their sports psychologist. So she opened a lot of doors for us. We've been around for maybe 30 years, but slowly getting into the scene. And it really was her triumph that got sports psychology into the mainstream conversation. And that mainstream conversation makes us really very happy, because the idea that athletes have to manage all of that competitive pressure alone is something that we kind of feel talaga for sports psychologists. And we kind of want to be there for them, but sometimes it's hampered by the lack of education and knowledge about sports psychology, the field in itself.
Yeah, I don't think people understand, right, with sports, it's, I think, more, yes, it is really physical, that's what most people see, but it's a lot more mental than physical. So with Heidelin, like you said, what steps did you help her take to be mentally strong for the Tokyo Games?
Well, I wasn't the direct sports psychologist of Heidelin, it was Dr. Karen Trinidad, but from what we have gathered, and as I said, Dr. Karen was very, very vocal because Heidelin was vocal. It was really that they forged a helping relationship and what we call a therapeutic alliance, so that they were allies going into that whole field. And Dr. Karen was really very honest when she said it didn't come naturally or it didn't come instantly, that kind of alliance. They had to build it up over the years, right? And when they built it up, it already reached a level where they could understand each other, they could converse about what was needed. She could really custom the program for Heidelin's personality and well-being, and that really was the helpful turning point, latchkey turning point towards really helping Heidelin reach a higher level of competitiveness.
And not only do athletes have to be mentally strong, like you mentioned, during their competitions, how would you suggest athletes or even our viewers, how would they overcome the hate, right? If they don't perform well, I think that's the biggest setback most athletes really take personally. How would you overcome the hate on social media and vocally from people?
Right. Well, actually, I always tell athletes, and even any of our colleagues, they say, if it's possible, don't look at social media too much. Especially going into
Impossible
a game. But exactly what I said. It's just impossible. Because I mean, even for us, I mean, like, what are people saying, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
social media,
Yes.
what are people saying? But even if just to minimize a little bit, like pre-competition, like some of the coaches, basketball, volleyball, the
Yeah.
very popular sports, they said, you're in the dugout before you're going to go in the competition and you're scrolling through social media.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, at least leave that for after. I mean, because you're just supposed to be focusing on what your next step is, which is the game just about to commence, right?
Yeah.
And they're scrolling through social media. I'm not saying all athletes are like that, but
I know
coaches
a few.
nowadays, yes, exactly. I think coaches nowadays really try to impose that on athletes or
Yeah.
tell athletes, if possible, not to put down their phones
Now,
and
how
their
about,
gadgets.
Doc, athletes who suffer from injuries, like let's say ACL, right? How do you help them deal with this kind of setback?
Well, obviously, because that's, if you think about it, they use their body a lot. That's their tool, right? To be able to do what they do best. And you damage the tool. So the normal reaction seemingly is, in fact, to be sad,
Yes,
depressed, all of
yes.
those signs of emotions. So sometimes when we get people saying, oh, they should be able to bounce back. I mean, it was only yesterday. Bounce
Yeah.
back today already. I mean, you get the idea, the principle. Sometimes
Right,
they
right.
kind of have to go through the journey and the process of feeling first their primary emotions and then hopefully get them to a better level where they have already processed the event. And then when you get to that, we try to be their support system,
Yeah.
basically, the people behind them. So sometimes it happens for the doctor, right? Physical therapist.
Yeah.
Right? And very seldom in the Philippines do they go for the sports psychologist because I guess they kind of do all of the other things
Yeah,
first.
they think of all of the physical things before the mental.
Yes.
And I don't know. Let's see if we can kind of work on that and change that with our discussion here, because we're not done with Doc Naira here on the show. In fact, we're gonna have her for one more segment. So we're gonna find out more about the sports psychology and mastering the mind when in regards to sports, especially how do sports psychologists help athletes maintain better relationships with their teammates and coaches and parents as well. Dr. Naira Orbeta will still be with us when we return. It's a beautiful day. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's still a beautiful day, and you're still watching It's a Beautiful Day. Now, we're going to update an early report in our traffic update earlier on the show. The MMDA says the expanded vehicle number coding scheme in Metro Manila is suspended today due to bad weather. So make sure you keep updated with regards to that. Now, we're also having a discussion on sports psychology with sports psychologist Dr. Naira Orbeta.
Now, Doc Naira, you talk about sports psychology here in the Philippines and how it's still growing. How many of you guys are actually here in the Philippines?
Well, I would say the core group is less than 10. But
less
we are
than
growing
10.
10 below. But there are other
Wow.
people who are sort of like, they do other fields and then
Okay.
they also sometimes practice sports
I was not
psychology.
expecting that with all our athletes and teams. 10?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, like, it's crazy when you think about that. Of course, there's a big supply and demand gap with regards to that. But then, of course, we also hear about the term motivation a lot, how keep players motivated. But I can't help but think about how parents motivate their kids as well. Talk about sports psychology. It's not just at the professional level.
Right.
It's also affecting some of the younger kids, because I've talked to a lot of high-level athletes at the younger level, and then how important parents are with regards to their development. What typical messages do you have to parents who may not know what they're doing to their kids in terms of their mental makeup, their psyche?
Right. For parents, they are the primary and first influence of kids, right? They are the ones that kids, in fact, don't want to disappoint. So what I always say to parents is, it's okay to want them to achieve, but you should be their safe space, their safe haven,
Right,
right?
yes.
Your job is to be a supportive parent. The job, for instance, of teaching skills is to coaches. And the job of maybe teaching other things related to academics is obviously for teachers. But your job is to be a safe space. And you can correct maybe behavior that you don't like. Let's say, nagdadabog, no? Dadabog. Siyempre, you can correct that behavior. But you shouldn't let the kid feel less. That's the most important part. And I I would like to believe parents have good intentions toward their kid, but it's the way sometimes
Yes.
that
That's
that
true.
manifests is maybe something that they need to learn a little bit more from.
You know, I'm a mom myself, you know, and sometimes I find myself, because my daughter is into chess, that's her sport. And sometimes, you know, we encourage her, but I think sometimes you get to the point where you encourage too much. Like she doesn't feel like training anymore, and you know, you push. Do you experience this with other parents, and do you, you know, like work with them when, you know, in dealing with the athletes?
Right. Usually when it comes to youth sports, it's important to include everybody. One of the big aspects of our work is relationship building with the people who are the stakeholders, if you think about it. So I guess that one of the, for minors especially, it's parents. And sometimes the kid will tell, you know, my parent expects so much of me, so what do I do? So I always ask permission, can I go to your parents and kind of be the bridge? And normally they say yes, but some say no, it will be worse if you talk. So that's how scared or they are of disappointing their parents.
Flashback ako sa mga college games and high school games, nakakita mo sa side na galit yung mga magulang. Very loud, yelling at referees and players, like minsan mga coaches nga rin eh. But then when you talk about the working in a team environment, for example, obviously the parents will be there, especially sa youth sports, but then it's also about realizing, at least for some of the kids, kung anong role nila sa team. And it feels like the approach has to be different with regards to each and every player, with regards to expectations. How would sports psychologists handle that? Yung mga ego sa team and how they all fit together?
Well, for a sports psychologist, you have to know your player, obviously. And if it's a team sport, there are individual dynamics and then there are team dynamics. So you kind of have to do both and try to find out how you can work together. Because the success of one in team sports is the success of everyone. And even if you are, you know, a role player, a bench player, you still play a role, in fact. You can still be a cheerer and all those kinds of things. So it's really understanding what best helps them. Sometimes I have this exercise, who likes challenge here? And then who likes calmness? And then really divide, right?
Yeah.
Kung yung gusto niyo pinapagalitan ng coach, sino yung mga dito, and who wants to be like, so encouraged, and they will really divide. So you can see, and even coaches are surprised, like, I didn't realize that you didn't like this and you didn't like that. So sometimes it's really just planting awareness for the coaches and for the other people in that setting. That is helpful.
And aside from what you just talked about, planting awareness, what are other important or most used skills that you help athletes perform?
Right. Well, obviously it's coping with the demands of competition. Competitive anxiety is a big thing. Performance anxiety is a big thing. And I can imagine for all of us, and we're going to do some important endeavor, we also have anxiety once we get there. But it's really managing that and getting them to understand that it's never a zero. Because you're going to competition. If you didn't want to have that kind of competitive environment, don't play sports.
Actually,
right? You see, it's the demand talaga of the sport and the field itself that requires that kind of, you know, resilience and grit.
Here's the unfortunate truth for a lot of people that maybe they don't realize, that losing happens a lot. How do you help athletes, especially high-level athletes, cope with losses? Because I've seen athletes who question yung mga self-worth nila after particularly bad losses.
Right. I think, again, that's one part and parcel of the, I call it as normal, because athletes really invest so much of their time and effort into trying to perfect their sport. But I always tell them, like, you know, if it's just a question of winning 1 or 2 games, you can always win games. You can go inter-barangay or you can go lower level. You can win every game that you want there, right? But if you're going competitive and higher levels of competition, you have to play the long game, is what I call it, right? You have to take what you learn from the losses and put it in your arsenal so that you become stronger and better. You can only challenge higher level athletes so that you also go up. Right?
Yeah, I was about to say that mag-mosquito league muna ako para can build up my confidence. But then, you think, sorry, Doc, but before we start wrapping things up here, for those who are still, I guess, skeptical about sports psychology and how it can impact the athletes, what advert could you put out there for advocating for mental health or mental strength, mental fitness for athletes in general, even those who are in a situation where they're going to compete or perform or have to have a high level of competencies for whatever event?
Well, the idea there is athletes are not robots, right? You're after holistic development. So it's not just the physical. You want to advocate for the cognitive development, emotional development, social development, and even their moral, spiritual development in terms of values as an athlete. And if you put all of that together, train everything. Why only train the one area? Train everything, because that's a holistic person you're dealing with. They are not robots.
Right.
So if you can train everything, it will be a boon for you rather than a bane.
Right.
And if you do not train the other parts, it will be to your detriment for sure.
Ma'am, for those undergrads who are deciding whether or not they should really focus on sports psychology, what can you say to them?
Please come and join us. We are few in number, but we are fun. Let's say that.
I love
that. Right? We're fun, we're cool. We like to think that. We label ourselves that. But it's a field that you can grow with. Maybe our generation, it's not yet well developed, but hopefully the next generation, it will be as developed as clinical psychology or other counseling psychology. So we advise everyone who is interested or even partially interested to ask us, and we can point you in the right directions for continuing education.
All right, so only 10 of them in the Philippines right now, sana that dumami rin.
I hope that, like triple
We need it.
soon.
We need it in the country, yes.
Absolutely. Again, Doc, maraming salamat. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having
and,
me.
of course, you
Thank
can
you.
look her up on her social medias as well for any more information. That's it for us this Wednesday morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Ako po si Paolo del Rosario.
Stay safe and dry out there, guys. I'm Anne Asis-Carilo.
And I'm Monique Tuzon. See you all again tomorrow morning, 7 on the dot, only here on
It's a beautiful day!